I just finished watching the movie Uglies, and I gotta say, I am very, very pleasantly surprised that this was good when I first clicked on it, because my wife and I got some food yesterday, and we were just scrolling through Netflix looking for something to watch, and then we saw that Uglies was like at the top of Netflix, so we're like, okay, you know what, we're gonna give it a shot. And actually, after the movie began, I was like, okay, I don't know how this is gonna be, but I actually ended up enjoying it when it all started coming to a close, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to the next movie. Today, we're going to be talking about Uglies. Spoilers ahead, I'm going to be diving through all of the plot, or at least the major points of the plot, talking about something that I liked, anything that I didn't like, and we're just going to go through the entire thing. Again, spoilers ahead, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels. Guys, let's talk about Uglies. So, this is a movie that is set 300, I believe it's 300 years into the future, where the government controls everything, and they control people by using plastic surgery. And it's very interesting to see where you have all of these pretty people. And I'll start with this because my initial thought when I saw this, when it opened up, because they were talking about like, oh my god, all of these people over the bridge, over in the city, they're all pretty, and we're over here, we're really ugly. And then we're brought to our main character, and I mean, like, she's not gorgeous or anything, but she's not ugly. And that's what I was kind of like sitting there, because I literally laughed to myself a little bit, like because it's just a regular actress. And then I started sitting there and being like, well, how did the casting go for this? Did they say, hey, we need somebody who is like average to below average level of beauty, and we need them to be their main character of a movie called Uglies? I'm interested to see how that casting went, but for what it's worth, I don't think that she is a very ugly person. But anyways, as I mentioned, so at the age of 16, everybody goes through this pretty operation where they can go into the city, and it's a world kind of, they have their own standard of beauty. Nobody's going to be discriminated for the way they look anymore. And to be honest with you, like, kind of the thought process behind that is not too bad. I personally would never want to change myself, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people watching this video who wouldn't want to change themselves, but I'm thinking, like, if you're born just thinking that you're completely ugly, completely wrong in the way that you're built, maybe by the time you hit 16, you'll be looking forward to that. So Tally, our main character, is almost 16 years old, and her friend has to undergo that surgery. But before we get into that, we want to open up just a little bit more about what the pretties are kind of living. They kind of live like this carefree life. It's just one big party. They spend the beginning of the movie just kind of like spying on them. And I had to look it up and get a couple notes over my screen right here, because I don't remember exactly what was wrong with the world. So bacteria ended up infecting the majority of the world. Cars and oil fields exploded. Food transportation is halted. Society, which relied heavily on oil, collapsed. So the thing is, and I'm very, very happy this wasn't the case, when they were first talking about like was it like one of the first opening monologues? I don't really remember, but it was really at the beginning of the movie where she's like, the world relied too much on fossil fuels. And I'm like, okay, here we go, because there are so many movies today now where you just have to pay attention, and it's not going to be about the artwork. It's not going to be about making a good movie. It's about providing a message. And thankfully that wasn't the case, because when I was sitting down and it was so serious, the world relied too much on fossil fuels. You know, there's like a giant fight against fossil fuels, and it's been like that for what, maybe like 5-10 years now. So I thought that's where we were going to head. And again, I know it's a little bit of a touchy subject. I'm not saying whether I'm like pro or against fossil fuels. I'm just saying that I don't like it when movies rely on sending a message instead of creating good art. So I'm pleasantly surprised that that wasn't the case. I believe that's like the only time they've actually mentioned fossil fuels in the movie. But now we actually kind of kick off the main point of the story. So like I mentioned earlier, Tally, our main character, is almost 16 years old. She cannot wait to get the pretty surgery, and her best friend, Paris, already underwent the surgery. And there was kind of like this whole thing of them showing how like they're best friends forever. They ended up having their own scars, and I always cringe when people do that. Like, you have two scars that are like actively bleeding, and then you're like, I'm like, it gives me the shivers, man. Like, but anyways, so they end up Tally asks Paris to meet with her in a month to tell her everything that's going on in the city. He doesn't end up showing up, of course, so she ends up sneaking into the city, and she meets Paris. And we have this little big, like, kind of heartbreaking moment where he doesn't just care about her at all, and you can tell that the surgery obviously just affected his mind somehow. He's like, oh yeah, you're just one of those uglies. And then she was like really, really heartbroken about it. And that's one thing about this movie that was a little bit frustrating to watch. Not necessarily frustrating, but there was nothing that really gave it that oomph in a movie that I'm looking forward to, because everything was majorly predictable. Like, you see this, they have this big idea about people changing their face and going through the pretty surgery. Obviously, the story is going to be about Tally figuring out that she doesn't want the surgery, and every single plot point kind of moving forward was extremely predictable. I don't think there's one thing that shocked me, to be honest with you, but you know what? As we continue on through the plot of the story, maybe I'll talk about something that did shock me. I even, like, moving down with the movie, I knew that the big conflict would be her admitting that she actually didn't come to want to be part of the smoke. Like, that's the only really big problem I had about the movie. But anyways, she ends up taking off, a little bit heartbroken. She has to run away from everybody. And the action scenes are oddly good for, like, a little Netflix movie. Because there was a lot of CGI in there, and it actually looked pretty good in my opinion. So we have some pretty cool fight scene, or not fight scenes, a couple cool chase scenes. And after Tally's almost going to get caught by the people trying to bring her back to Uglyville, she meets her new friend Shay. They run away together, they have the hoverboard, and they have some fun together. They just bond really closely. They go through kind of just a bunch of time waiting for their pretty surgery. They end up having the same birthday. They have a lot of fun together, and right before their 16th birthday, right before the pretty organization, Shay tries to get Tally to run away from her. She doesn't want the surgery because there are supposedly these weird people named the Smoke, or an organization named the Smoke, where you don't have to live in the city and you don't have to live in the ugly town. You could just live and grow your own food, and it's kind of like how people used to be, obviously. And Tally doesn't want to do that, but Shay ends up taken off by herself. She shows about this person named David who will recruit people. You just need to start a fire in the city. And it's really cool, by the way, when they actually ended up leaving that kind of enclosed space by the government, because I always like post-apocalyptic type movies, and to see how the world kind of collapsed and the city was completely like damaged 100%. So Shay ended up leaving there, and then Tally like was stuck there. Thankfully she found her way back, but I was thinking like, okay, Shay brought her there and you knew that she wanted the surgery. Why are you just abandoning your friend in an abandoned city? But at the end of the day, Tally didn't want to go with Shay, and Shay ended up leaving to go with the Smoke and this mysterious man named David. Now, this is another thing that was extremely predictable, because obviously this weird group is actually going to be the good guys. Oh no, humans want to live how humans were meant to live. I knew that she was going to end up switching sides. I knew that she was going to end up like abandoning the surgery and just wanting to go back with the Smoke, because obviously Shay left behind a kind of cryptic message on how to find the Smoke and where to go in a way that only Tally could read. So Tally ends up going back. Tally ends up being all excited for her 16th birthday because she really wanted to be pretty this entire time. She's been looking forward to it this whole time. She was looking at Shay like she's a complete weirdo, because like, you don't want to be pretty, and it's easy to not it's much easier for okay, no. We were going to start talking about people's looks, but everybody is pretty. Everybody is deserving of love. There is no criticism that will be held on YouTube. I'm extremely grateful to be on this platform. The movie's called Uglies, but nobody's actually ugly, okay? Anyways, Tally ends up going to have her operation. She's all excited. It's her 16th birthday. She can finally meet back up with Paris. It's something that she's been waiting for her entire life. But then as everybody's name gets called, she is brought to the head of the government. I don't recall what the doctor's name actually was. My apologies, but she ended up giving Tally an ultimatum, because obviously they wanted to catch the Smoke. They wanted to catch David. They wanted to catch Shay, and they were phrasing the Smoke like, okay, this David guy, he captures people and brainwashes them. They have a weapon. They want to take us down. They want to start war. They're bad people, and they're mind-corrupting Shay. And Shay knows when you see Shay, she's going to be completely brainwashed by this guy named David. Again, very predictable in the movie. Obviously, these are the bad guys, and the good guys are the ones where Shay went up with. She ended up getting put back in her dorm for a night. Paris ended up seeing her, and obviously Paris didn't care about her. Paris was just sent there to talk to her, and even though he didn't care all the time, but then we had a weird moment where Paris kind of was like, okay, well, when I'm out of the city, I kind of actually felt like I was okay with Tally again. But then the piece of crap was acting like he wasn't weird before. So very strange situation there, but nothing really came from it. But Tally ended up wanting to help find Shay. She wanted to protect Shay. David's the bad guy. So she was really just fooled into showing them where the Smoke is. So she was given a hoverboard, and she went off to go find her friends and join the Smoke. So after some long travel and Tally actually trying some real food for once in her life, and they made a little bit of a big deal about that, how disconnected she is. She ends up finding the smoke, being introduced to them, and she is only kind of honest with Shay when she bonds with Shay again, because she's kind of like has 1 foot in, 1 foot out, as Shay ended up describing it. But there's nothing really anything of significance to really talk about right now, because it's just a bunch of Tally learning how to live for once in her life. Like, she's never used her hands, she gets blisters. The only other thing is obviously she figures out that these guys are actually really, really good people. They have a little bit of a chase scene with the government trying to catch them, but other than that, there isn't a ton to really talk about besides the fact that David, who is the leader of the entire thing, ends up bonding with Tally, falling in love with Tally just a little bit. And I know that the romance ended up getting a little bit more, not intense, I don't want to say, but the feelings kind of escalated towards the end of the movie. But it was obvious that the dude just liked her, right? So there's nothing really of substance that happened there besides her just realizing, and that along with her just still looking for a weapon. So after all of that came about, and one guy not trusting her, which was crazy to trust her, by the way, because apparently nobody's found them by themselves before. Shocker, like, why would you let this girl in, okay? Again, and you could tell that the big conflict here was Tally was going to fall in love with the place, and then would have to struggle with the idea that she was actually sent there to find their location. After David falls in love with Tally, he's ready to tell her the truth about everything. So he brings her back to her parents, and Tally has never seen actually her own parents, so she's kind of fascinated by the way. And what's interesting about this movie is this is something that I can unfortunately see generations and generations down the road. Do I think it's going to be this extreme? Maybe not, but life is going to be something like that. I think everybody's going to kind of be secluded into their own apartment. Everybody's going to, yeah, like, you have to be careful what you talk about, of course, right? Which would be great down the road when somebody, like, years down the road, and somebody finds this video. Yeah, that's going to be fantastic. That's going to be the best way to live. I love it. Anyways, sorry. So, David's parents were actually the original runaways from the Pretty City. They worked with the government, and they were responsible for kind of making the pretty operation. But what they didn't know is the idea of the pretty organization, or the pretty operation, is to make people docile, close-minded. They have a false sense of happiness after they get the surgery. They just live life kind of like a major like weed addict. You know, it's not to say like I have anything against people who smoke weed, but you know, the people that just spend all of their time just smoking, and they kind of sit there like, yeah, because they're like always high and they don't know what's going on in life. That's kind of how the operation's like. So they ended up getting the boot, and that's what the operation's about. Tally did not know this. Tally was convinced otherwise. Tally was brought there because she confessed to Dave's like, well, people say stuff about you. They say you have a weapon, and the weapon is actually a cure to everybody being pretty and undoing. I don't know if it undoes what the operation did, but it undoes that kind of brainwashing. And the government wants to control everybody in this movie, not real life. The government would never try to do that in real life. But this whole information kind of leaves Tally like not heartbroken, scared. She finally realized what's going on this planet. So the pendant she ended up wearing that was a tracker, she ended up trying to burn it and just get rid of it, but burning it actually ended up revealing the location and activating the tracker. So now the government's on its way. And it's important to note too, well, they started having this brand new operation that kind of makes people into Captain America soldiers. The next morning, in a shocking revelation, the government ended up attacking the smoke and capturing people. They kind of rallied up everybody together. They wanted to find David. David was hiding. Tally was hiding. And what ended up happening was Paris grabbed David's father by the neck, snapping it, because they're just like, where's David? Where's David? And I actually like the fact that they went that far in the movie to actually like snap somebody's neck. Looked kind of cool. And no matter what they did, these superhuman Captain America Winter Soldiers weren't enough weren't like anything that the smoke could end up handling. So like I said, they were all kind of rallied up. They were all going to be forced to get the surgery. David and Tally ended up escaping at the last second on a hoverboard, and they wanted to go take on the city and just make everything great again, right? Rescue the people, and who knew what was going to happen next? It's not like this movie was entirely predictable. Another thing was David's mother or father, I don't remember which, ended up sneaking the cure into David's pocket. I wonder what that's going to be used for. Maybe one of them is going to turn pretty, and it's going to be like this horrible, horrible thing that nobody's going to, like, it's somebody got turned pretty. oh no, they're basically dead. Oh, but we have the cure. Now, this next part of the movie was actually like really, really well done. I liked the idea of the different like flying cars going around, the ships, and things kind of turning into ash. There's a little bit of a war beginning, an uprising in the city. I thought it was really well done, the visuals, and I was kind of sitting here and thinking like, this could have been just a trilogy of movies in itself. Like spending one with just Tally kind of realizing maybe she wants to go with David and but then again, that in particular might have been a little bit boring if not done well. But at the very least, like 2 movies. You could have just waited for this to kind of be the end where they actually have their attack, because I felt like this movie was just like go, 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 go. They just didn't take any breaks. And the pacing was okay. At least there wasn't any like dull moments in the movie where I was sitting here being like, okay, let's go. Because there are movies nowadays that kind of have pacing issues. I'd rather a movie be a little bit too fast and a little bit too short, or excuse me, a little bit too slow. But I felt like I was like, okay, well, we just watched David's dad die, and now all of a sudden we're like storming the Capitol. That's kind of how I feel about it. But regardless, like I said, it was well done. I liked them kind of just dodging the debris. I liked the scenery. The graphics were good, but they ended up anyways like entering the, I guess, government headquarters, and they ended up finding the doctor there, and the doctor wanted to turn them into pretties, and they're like, hey, you stop what you're doing right now. And then here's the big moment. Shay walks out, and Shay's been turned pretty, and like they went out of their way to like make sure Shay was turned into like the prettiest character of all time, just to show like how bad this is. And I can't help but look, I'm like, oh my god, okay, well, you know what? Sorry. No. Shay was better before. But it actually was this kind of like heartbreaking moment a little bit, but it was only heartbreaking for half a second, because I'm like, okay, well, David has the cure. I wonder what's going to happen to Shay. Right? So that kind of feeling the movie gave me didn't last very long. They ended up getting captured a little bit more, and they're about to go through the process. The thing's about to go straight into one of their eyes to start changing their face. But then all of a sudden, one of the members of the Smoke ride in with a helicopter in kick-ass style, and they just end up lighting the whole thing up. I thought it was a little bit weird that he used a flamethrower instead of a gun, because the other people were in there. But hey, you know what? I guess if you're part of a group named the Smoke, then maybe you could survive the fire. So they all end up escaping, and because they have the new serum that they could combine with the cure, they end up like figuring out they can actually end up having a cure. But I don't know how long that's actually going to take. I thought because of the pacing of the movie, it was going to be as simple as, wow, we can make the cure. All right, ready to be cured? Like, I thought that's what was going to come, but it looks like there's actually going to be a part 2 to this movie. But anyways, they ended up wanting to use it on Shay, but Shay just absolutely 100% refuses. She's like, ooh, why would I want it to become ugly again? No, thank you. Why don't you guys become pretty like me? She's kind of just like completely brain dead in the sense. And everybody except, I think, Maddie was against doing surgery on an unwilling subject. Now, I understand that to an extent, but you know that this girl's kind of absolutely brain dead, and you know that it would be best for her. I understand both sides of it, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of on Tally's side for that. Just get her, hold her down, and give her the cure. But Tally ended up wanting to be the first willing test subject, but in order to do that, she's going to need to become pretty. And she said that she's going to give people a sign, because obviously her mind is going to be really, really numbed. But she thinks she's strong, and she thinks that there's a way that she can signal people to say, hey, I'm Tally, and I still want this surgery. I'm still me in here, okay? So you're going to need to capture me. So her and Shay ended up getting captured. She has this big moment where she's like, I'm Tally, whatever my last name is, and make me pretty. She gets brought back into the city, and then we're actually brought to this brand new room, and it's like really, really luxurious, and she has everything that she ever wanted, and we end up closing out the movie with Tally looking into a mirror, and she is gorgeous, and it ends. So after all of that, I understand it was predictable. It was fast moving. It wasn't even nearly the best thing that I've seen in a while, right? It was a little bit better than okay, in my opinion. It was just good. It's worth seeing a second movie. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen after this. Again, it's probably predictable. They're going to save them. They're going to have struggles because Tally's going to be like, no, I don't want to. Why would I want to be killed? Why would I ever agree to such a thing? And then they're going to like work harder and find the girl that's actually inside of Tally. You know, I see that coming, but I actually thought it was a good movie. I was pleasantly surprised. But maybe I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't expect anything to come from this movie. So I think it's worth a watch, to be honest with you. But then again, like, why would you have watched this entire video if you haven't already watched it? I'd love to know what you guys think about this down below. Anyways, I'm going to call it there. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys are interested, you can check out a review I did for Inside Out. You can have it right here, the new Inside Out, excuse me. I'd love to have you over there, guys. Take care, everybody.